The next segment, marrying period pieces. Married pieces are double-cased objects that do not start life together, but have been joined in matrimony for financial gain. Some marriages took place long ago. These partners usually are age unequal and can usually spot the aged matchmaking a mile away. Other marriages are fresh and easily recognizable. When a bookcase, the top of which was once a desk, and bookcase survives without its desk, it is of comparatively little value. Immediately, a search begins for a suitable desk. Suitable entails correct dimensions, compatible if not identical wood, preferably, but not always, the same style. The customer may not know any better in this situation, and ideally the same area of manufacture. But matchmakers seldom wait for the ideal mate. Innumerable upper cases of high chest have become separated from their bases over the years, and the two parts have since gone different ways. A marriage, one old, one new. Not every dealer has the patience to wait for a mating piece for a double case. To hasten the turnover of stock and to accommodate customer taste and financial greed, many a new bookcase have been made for what was originally simply a desk. The top board can testify to its single past. This will remain unfinished under the bookcase top. It will show, in considering the value of the marriage, evaluate the two separate entities, for that's what it really is, two separate entities. This is generally less desirable than the mating of the two odd pieces, because half is really a new reproduction. Englishmen with an American address, the Englishmen who busy themselves making antique furniture with wood salvaged from bombed out buildings after World War II were not new to the trade. In the early 20th century, American tourists seeking their ancestral roots in Britain brought home boatloads of 17th century English fakes. A joke among English furniture makers is that the survival rate for 18th century easy chairs in Britain is so high that there are more of them today than there were in the 18th century. Many English fakers throughout the last 150 years built fakes out of old wood, which copied American designs. These objects over the last 100 years have found their way into American antique shops. If you ask the majority of these dealers the origin of these objects, a common reply would be, not sure if it's American or British. Hence, much British furniture passes as American furniture. Wood is one clue to origin. Style is another. Construction also helps. Reproductions honestly made, but now misrepresented. A reproduction is an object made in an old world style, in admiration and honor to that of that old style, and never intended to be presented to a buyer as an antique. Some reproductions are copied from antique examples. Others are based on antique styles, with the craftsman using varying amounts of imagination. Old reproductions can cause less the age than have acquired can make them appear antique. In dealers' language, the honest presentation of an old reproduction is it has some age. This is not a misrepresentation unless the reproduction is completely new. New reproductions, of course, looks new and cannot pass as having some age unless the buyer fails to examine the furniture. Most old reproductions, according to Wallace Nutting, were made with modern tools in shops utilizing modern methods. These techniques of construction are clear and obvious. Evidence that the reproductions are just that. These were never intended as fakes. The wood was finished in the manner, with the materials, and to the sheen that was popular at that time. The age of such finishes is so evident today that our chief concern is that we might overlook a good antique hidden under the 1920s refinishing. Some reproductions are labeled or branded. Some reproductions labeled and branded by the maker, others are not. Some makers' labels or brands have been obliterated in an attempt to pass off an old reproduction as an antique. It's unfortunate that the object has lost its mark of the reproducer, for it could have brought added value to the piece of furniture, to the object. Wallace Nutting's reproductions are bringing extraordinarily high prices, almost rivaling those of the antiques they emulate. If the reproduction has been made by hand with antique tools, or if the furniture is a fake created long ago, there will be no evidence of machine construction to give it away. This makes these objects difficult to identify. Most old fakes and old handmade reproductions were not copied line for line, measure for measure, tool for tool, piece from small piece from the original. Some of the taste of the time of production always creeps into the product. Always look for proportions, finish, materials, and the design details. Usually the proportions of the reproductions as a whole or of its several parts are not consistent with those of period pieces. So you need to know the proportional relationships found on genuine examples. Most of the finish applied to a reproduction is whatever type the commonly used at that time the furniture was made, not the sort used in the period being simulated or emulated. The faked antique finish has since aged, having a different past than the genuine. It now has a different appearance, so you need to be familiar with finishes. It is vital that one learns which finished woods were used for building furniture, whether it is from what country or regions, or quote certain school of families of cabinet makers. Also, the eye and hand must become very familiar with changes of design details over time in different regions and countries. Put the study time in and compare and contrast these examples. Out of ignorance, craftsmen in 1920 might have placed a Boston-style high chest in New York-style legs and finished it with a Philadelphia-style pediment. In creating reproductions, in making fakes, and in remaking or repairing antiques, lack of knowledge of regional design variations was a common cause of error and is now a giveaway, a dead giveaway. Although it is most unlikely that the possibility does exist that a fake or reproduction was copied exactly from a model, was constructed by hand in the ancient ways, has aged so it now looks old enough to be of the period, and has escaped all the influences of its time of manufacture. That might reveal its true nature. It is possible for you to be fooled, though it is unlikely.